Do you want to take a picture of this?
Whoops.
Fuck me, goddamn it.
Hello and welcome to the Suburbanista podcast with me, Dr. Paul McGinn from the University of Western Australia. In January every year, the adult entertainment industry makes its annual pilgrimage to the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas for the AVN Adult Entertainment Expo, an award show. This temporary migration of the porn industry from US cities such as Los Angeles, San Francisco, Miami and Charlotte, and from around the world, offers porn fans and curious tourists the chance to get up close and personal with porn performers. It's an opportunity for members of the porn community to catch up with one another, to showcase and discuss the latest technological, market and regulatory developments, and celebrate the achievement of performers, producers, directors and writers at the award show, the so-called Porn Oscars. I was at the AVN Expo to take part in a panel based on a research project on porn consumption and the socio-sexual attitudes of fans who attend the expo. I took the opportunity to interview a number of porn performers for a special series as part of the Suburbanista podcast. The CarPoolXXX series takes a look at performers as a migrant community and explores the migration and resettlement experiences of performers who have moved to Los Angeles and Las Vegas from elsewhere in the United States. Interviews were conducted with Melissa Monet, Kiki Dare, Charlotte Cross, Alana Cruz, and a young married couple, Lindsay Love and Michael Scott, who produce amateur porn. In episode 3 of CarPoolXXX, I chat with Ela Darling, a former librarian turned adult performer and entrepreneur who is leading the way in virtual reality porn. Sit back, relax, and join me on a journey with the queen of VR porn.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Suburbanista podcast. I'm here in Las Vegas with Ela Darling here at the AVN Expo. We're going to be talking today about porn performers as a migrant community. So Ela, can you tell the listeners for the Suburbanista podcast a little bit about yourself, where you're from?
Yeah, so I'm Ela Darling. I'm the head of Cam4 VR. It's the only live virtual reality webcam platform. And I'm kind of from all over. I was born in California. I lived in New Mexico and Michigan briefly, but I feel like I really grew up in Texas. I lived in Illinois for grad school. I lived in Boston for a year when I was a librarian, and then I came out here to LA to do porn.
So you were a librarian before getting into the industry?
Yes, I was. I was a reference librarian.
Okay, and is that in like a state library, a university library, public library?
A town library, a public library in a small town outside of Boston, Mass.
Okay. And is that what your first degree was in?
My master's degree was library and information science.
Oh, cool. So in terms of moving from Texas to LA and being in the industry, can you kind of give us a bit of a background as to when that happened, how that happened, and why that happened?
Yeah, so I moved to Los Angeles when I was 23 years old for two primary reasons. One was to get married, and one was to do porn. I was a librarian. I started doing some fetish modeling and just sort of got my feet wet, and I realized I really liked it. And if I wanted to do it full time, I really ought to live in Los Angeles, where the porn community lives. So I decided I wanted to do that, and I also fell in love at the same time. And I gotta say, one of those was a really, really excellent choice, and one of those was not the best choice. But I love the porn.
Okay, and in terms of moving to LA to be in the industry, you mentioned there because the porn community is in LA. Did you move to the San Fernando Valley to be, close to the industry and close to other performers?
I did not. I moved to downtown Los Angeles initially, and there was a small contingent of pornographers in downtown. So I had some people close by I would shoot with, and then I would just drive out to the valley. But downtown is definitely closer than Boston, so that was sort of the choice.
Closer to Boston?
Closer than Boston.
Oh, closer than Boston. And in terms of that migration, did you fly, drive when you made that big move? Was it a journey of kind of adventure?
Yeah, I rented a moving truck and I drove it across the country with a stop off in Texas to see my family, and then I continued on to LA. So it was quite an adventure. I mean, those moving trucks are huge and they're very heavy, so driving them is an experience. And seeing the world with all of your belongings with you, it's sort of just, you have this very cohesive sense of movement through the country when you don't technically have a place at the moment.
Okay. And in terms of deciding to live downtown, did you know that you were going to live downtown? Did you have this kind of plan mapped out?
I knew I was going to live downtown because my ex-husband he had just signed a lease on a loft downtown, and it was really, really cool. It was this big, beautiful sort of industrial loft with like bare concrete and brick and concrete floors, and there's a big mural down the center of the living room. It was like a sort of an homage to Hogwarts, the Hogwarts Express, it was just really neat. I really liked it.
Okay. And in terms of, you mentioned there were some other pornographers, performers, producers, directors. Which part of the industry?
All parts of the industry.
Okay.
Yeah, there were some directors, some photographers, and some performers.
And was that the community that you were kind of, I suppose, you tapped into? Because you were on this journey to be in porn as well as getting married. But I mean, did you seek out the porn community, or did they find you?
I'm very introverted and very shy sometimes. So when I got here, I sort of would meet a few people on set and start to get to know them. But I felt like I didn't quite feel like I belonged just yet, like in the community, because I was brand new. I didn't know who was who. I didn't know, basically like social conventions within porn. So I kind of took my time sort of observing and seeing what the community was like, and eventually sort of I tried to get to know people by being someone worth knowing.
Right. And in terms of your community network, your friend networks, your social networks, how would you describe that? Is it mainly porn community people? Is it a mixture of porn and non-porn? Or?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a mixture. I've got a couple of really close porn friends whom I absolutely adore, and they're, very dear to me. But I also have a lot of friends from the VR industry and the tech industry, and just the general entertainment industry. I don't know, I like to meet lots of different kinds of people.
Okay. What would you say about the, thinking about the porn community in general and on this issue of, other migrant groups tend to cluster with one another and, have very tight social networks.
Right.
Does that play out with the porn community?
Yes, but perhaps not in a traditional way. So we're all over. We don't have, a shared cultural background that drives us to, congregate in one space. What we have is this sort of just innate connection having a career as a sex worker and as a porn performer. There are challenges that you experience that are really hard for people to relate to if they've never been in it. And so, whether it's how to relate to your family regarding your career, or how to, get past certain challenges with dating, or just the fact that you're a freelancer and it's super feast or famine, and sometimes it can be very challenging. That's what I think really drives this industry together and the community together. Yeah.
And that's one of the questions that I'm really interested in trying to kind of understand by speaking to performers is, the stigma that surrounds sex work and the stigma that surrounds porn, despite the fact that it's mass consumed.
Yeah.
There's what I'm calling a kind of porn paradox in a sense. Millions of people know who you guys are. They, download your material, consume it, and so forth. But at the same time, porn performers are seen very much as a minority and a marginalized community, and like other migrant groups, that marginalization helps people, congregate, bond together, build social capital. So is that a kind of key facet of the industry?
It certainly is. It certainly is. Knowing that so many people consume the work that you do, and knowing that many of those same people vilify you for doing it, it's just a challenging experience. So that's certainly something that drives us together. And I think, like many marginalized communities, people are more than happy to profit and benefit from the work that we do, while disregarding us as people. And I certainly don't think that's limited to the porn industry. I think it's something that we see a lot.
In other areas of sex work?
Well, in sex work, but also in other marginalized communities.
Yes. In terms of the Valley, as the epicenter of porn production, at least historically, although that's probably gone through a process of disruption. We're here in Vegas, for example, and it's emerging as a new porn hub of some, porn epicenter.
Yeah.
What does the Valley mean to you? Is it a workspace? Is it a community space?
The Valley is very much work to me. I almost never go to the Valley unless I'm shooting porn or unless I'm filming something. So I very much associate the Valley with being in a work mindset, with having a suitcase full of lingerie and high heels, with having my hair and makeup done and yoga pants and ready to fuck. Like that's what I associate with the Valley.
Yeah. So you're a porn commuter.
Yes,
So you're going from downtown out to the burbs.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically. So as well as a migrant who came for
come in.
porn as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for me as a geographer, I think this is really interesting. It typifies, I think, that porn labour is just like any other worker in the sense that you get up in the morning, you leave your house, you drive to work, you do your work,
Yeah.
and then you return basically back home. Or
Yeah.
you go and meet friends after work.
No,
like
I
this.
mean, I go, I shoot porn, I come home, I make dinner, I feed my dog. Like, it is very much just a work. It's just a job.
In terms of your social network, I mean, how would you kind of describe that in terms of, we hear about, different migrant groups, for example, will go to places of worship, for example, and that's a way of creating a sense of identity and a sense of community. Are there spaces, churches or other spaces where the porn community hang out and kind of, be themselves?
I think that was really a strong facet of APAC, or is a strong facet of APAC, the Adult Performer Advocacy Committee. It's a group that meets every other month. There's a board of directors. It's all performers. I was on the board for 3 years, and it was created so that we could have seminars and panels and provide resources to performers and then have discussion afterwards. And what it became was just this sort of community meetup. Someone once compared it to AA, but for porn and you're not quitting. It's just this really great time to come together, eat some cookies, drink some water, and just share what you're going through and what your experiences are. And it creates this sense of understanding that if you're in a tough place right now, that you're not alone and that other people either have been there or are there as well. So definitely APAC meetings for me. And then these conventions. I'm actually kind of isolated. I don't really go out that much. If I'm not working, I'm usually just a shut-in. I don't go anywhere. So coming here, I'm doing my hair, doing my makeup, dressing up, and really putting on the Ela Darling persona to network with the people that I know and love in the community.
I'm working on another project. We did a survey of fans
Yeah.
who come to the AVN, and that's one of the things that's kind of emerging from the data as we're kind of looking through it about how the fans see this as an opportunity and a space for community as consumers of porn.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just like any other convention, convention goers, people who go to certain kinds of conventions tend to have their own community and tend to, start to really get to know each other. So I imagine there's several different communities here. There's the performer community, the general professional community, and also the fan community who, they have their own social structures and their own network of people in their group.
How many AVNs have you been to or taken part in?
7, I believe.
Okay. And what would you say have been the big changes in that 7 years that you have noticed?
When I first started coming to AVN and to the AEE, it was almost all there were a lot more tables. There were many more smaller tables and smaller booths with a lot more companies and a lot more production companies and just porn companies, more people selling DVDs. And what we see now when you're on the floor is most of the real estate is taken up by cam companies, of which I'm a part. And so I think that there's maybe a shift moving towards more independent cam performers coming from their houses, doing their own, creating their own brands and managing their own everything from their houses. So I think there's sort of an interlaced community developing of cam performers who maybe there's a few in a town and they get to know each other and they sort of have each other. And so for them, an experience like AVN, that's their only time to be able to network with each other and to see each other face to face. So AVN and XBiz, and all of the cam places and the big porn places.
Yeah. What about the fans? Have you seen a change in the kind of the profile of the fan base in terms of gender, people of color, diversity in that sense?
I feel like there's more women coming out now, but I really don't have anything to back that up. It's hard to really say because each year the attendees really depend on who's in town. So if 1 year there was a big gun show in town, so the fans were largely people that would be from that kind of crowd. Previously we overlapped with CES, so back then we had a lot more tech people and a lot more just coders and people who are very white collar. And so it just depends on who else is around.
Yeah. Just bringing it back to moving to downtown and performers in general moving to LA or even here to Vegas. In terms of getting housing, I mean, a lot of minority groups face a challenge in terms of getting, housing. A landlord finds out that you're a porn performer. Do you have any stories, personal or from friends, who've had difficulties basically getting a lease?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of issues, actually. So, first of all, because we're freelance and our paychecks are kind of irregular, the amount of money you have to have in your bank account just to sign a lease, I think they require you to make like 2 or 3, I think like 3 times as much per month, which is a lot. And also, you might make a very large amount in a year, but you could go a couple of months where you're not really having anything. So if they look at your bank deposits, then there's nothing to really back you up. So for a lot of landlords, they see it as a financial risk, or they worry that this sort of typified idea of who we are and how we're going to act will, impact their neighbors or their other tenants. Just about 2 years ago, I had to move out of my apartment because my landlord was fucking awful. She found out that I did porn and told one of the other tenants, and the other tenant just started being really, really awful. My landlord accused me of running a brothel from my apartment, which I don't leave my fucking house. The guys you see coming all over the time have UPS on their shirts. It was awful.
Yeah.
And so I lost my housing because of it. And then trying to find a new place, I probably applied to 10 different apartments and houses, and every time you apply, it's $100 fee. So it gets very expensive. And every time they would just opt to go with someone else. Housing in Los Angeles is already very challenging. I think we're at 95% occupancy.
Yeah.
So it just adds an extra layer of challenge. And I lucked out when I found the place I did. I'm outside of downtown now. But it was really just who will allow me to pay them rent.
When you make that application,
Yeah.
and they ask on the box occupation, what do you put?
Well, I say I work for a tech company, which is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Especially now, I'm working in tech now. But even before, none of these companies, all of these companies have a very strong technological component. I mean, there's this sort of tropey idea that all technology originates in porn, and much of it does. But so saying I work for a tech company is absolutely applicable either way. And I'm lucky that I'm not so famous and well known that someone's going to recognize me instantly. And I don't look the same off camera as I do on camera.
Right.
Chameleon.
And I mean, how kind of widespread would that experience be within the porn community in terms of housing discrimination?
Oh, I think it's very widespread. I think a lot of people deal with it by just finding a roommate who either has a connection with someone or finding a roommate who's not in porn. And a lot of people sort of just come together to share that space, and that can be really, really helpful for people.
Yeah.
I lived with another performer at one point, and it was good for us to have a shared space together.
Yeah. Do a lot of performers share together initially? When, particularly if they I'm thinking, if you migrate to a new city for the first time, you seek out people who are similar to you in some way, whether that's gender, race, religion. For you guys, it's labor.
Yeah, for sure.
So is that part of the migration strategy in a way that kind of help you kind of ease into a new city, a new life, and a resettlement process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of performers, when they come in, they stay in model houses. So it's a house that someone already owns, and they rent it out to performers coming in and out of town or who are new for weekly rates or daily rates sometimes. So I think a lot of performers start off in a space like that where it's very crowded, and it's sort of diving right into porn and porn community. And I think it's especially good for new performers to have people around them who are sharing the experience, who they can kind of look to understand and normalize the process they're experiencing.
Yeah. And in terms of within LA, do most performers live in the Valley, basically, in order to be close to work? Is that, are they broad generalization?
Many do.
Many do, okay. And are there other, what I'm calling them kind of porno burbs in a sense, because in geography and planning, we talk about neighborhoods where there are kind of, good representation of particular ethnic groups. Mm-hmm. They're called ethnoburbs.
Okay.
So I'm kind of playing around with that concept and trying to apply it to the porn community and saying, are there porno burbs, or is it more tighter? Is there, No.
I don't think there's anything nearly like that as there is with ethnicity. Like I said, it's challenging to get housing, and we're not a protected class, and discriminating against us is absolutely legal and okay as far as the government is concerned. So it's hard for us to cluster in that kind of way, because nobody wants to own a house that's in porno land. I imagine people would be worried about their property values. And, we're a very stigmatized community, so nobody wants to create a residential red light district.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what we see. So they're scattered all over. Many are in the valley. I wouldn't say there's like a neighborhood that's just porn
Just
town. No,
porn
nothing
town?
like that. No.
Okay. That's been fantastic, Ella.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. It's fascinating to hear your story, about migrating, your time in porn and so
Yeah.
forth. So thank you for taking part in the Suburbanista podcast.
Thank you for having
so
me.
much.
Lovely.
That's a wrap for another episode of Suburbanista podcast. CarPoolXXX here in Las Vegas at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino.